Susan.
All right, I'm going to share a screen. So let's see how we do that.
Yeah, give it a shot. It should work. We practice, so we know it's going to work.
All right, let me get my presentation.
Part of the prep is we always do the run through with our speakers, and Susan did a great job. There we go. Awesome.
All right, are you seeing a full screen?
Yes.
All right, great. So thank you for that introduction, and I do appreciate having the opportunity to talk to this group, this PDM event on training within industry. I'm very passionate about it, so giving me some time to go through this is great. As you've mentioned, I have my own business now, but prior to this had many years of being in manufacturing and fiber optics type of industry, producing stuff out of glass, injection molding, and then part of the national MEP organization in Massachusetts, helping small and medium-sized manufacturers, large manufacturers. And all that journey, I got the opportunity to become certified as an instructor for TWI, all of the J modules, which I'll be going over in just a couple of minutes. And so I've had the opportunity to get certified, but also have been working with companies on implementing these best practices, which is where the rubber hits the road, right? We can learn about all these best practices, but putting them to use is the question. So what I thought I would do tonight is give a brief introduction about what TWI is. I can answer any questions if people have specific questions. I'll give a nod to history, talk a little bit about why I think it's important in today's businesses. I'll go into some specifics, but not everything, about what the J modules are, a comment on implementation, and then any final thoughts and questions. Before I start the presentation, Ken, I was wondering if you could take a look at chat. I'm asking those who are on today to maybe a little informal survey. If you could put in the chat box what your background is, each of you, for TWI. In other words, on a scale of 0 to 10. 0 mean I've never heard of it. 5 might mean I've been to some conferences, I've taken a workshop, I've read a book, I've gained some knowledge. 10 might be I've been a part of a group that's fully implemented any of the J modules and been successful in sustaining it. So that's what I'm curious. So I kind of know your backgrounds in TWI.
So I'll read them to you. Let's see. We have a 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2. TWI continuous improvement. 0. So we have a lot of newbies that are very curious about how this is going to work.
All right. Well, that just helps me.
4.
That just, yeah, thank you. So that just gives me a little bit of help to know who's on the event tonight with respect to TWI. And of course, like you said, if there's any questions, just type it in chat. So this first slide is my nod to history. I'm not the historian on TWI. A lot of people have studied this stuff, but I want to give you a little background. It was developed as a government service program, an emergency service program back in the 40s to gear up for the war. So it was used in both manufacturing and healthcare. I've got the image of Rosie the Riveter on this slide. So think about the people who maybe were joining the manufacturing plants, perhaps had not had experience and working in manufacturing. However, they had an urgent need, and that was to get out stuff, good quality products as quickly as possible. And they were very successful at that. The box at the bottom right-hand corner shows you some of the metrics that they measured. I believe it was something like 600 different companies, but millions of Americans went through this training over a 5-year period. And so look at the ways that they describe success. Increasing production. So these are things we care about today. Fast forward till now. Increasing production, reducing training time, our productivity with our labor, our quality results. And it says grievances. We can think about this in terms of how people were feeling about their jobs. And so we care about all these today. Now, when the war was done, the TWI program disappeared from the U.S. and it went overseas. In fact, there were articles in the Wall Street Journal. There was an article in 1951 on instilling TWI in Japan. And so one of the organizations that was introduced to TWI along the way is Toyota. And in fact, the Toyota production system, which you may know of from the acronym TPS or lean manufacturing, the basis for that came from the TWI program. Toyota uses job instruction. I'll go over the specifics of that in just a second. Exactly today as it was designed in the 40s, same materials. Kaizen, you may be familiar with that term. The Japanese word for take it apart, put it back together again better. That came directly from job methods in the TWI program. So that's the history of where the TWI program came from. It disappeared from the U.S., but in the 1990s, people like Dr. Alan Robinson, there were a few other people, began to do some research. They saw TWI referenced in various materials, including a book called Kaizen. So through this research, the program resurfaced in the U.S. And the first workshops held with TWI materials from the 40s took place in the early 2000s. I was lucky enough to be invited to participate in both the job instruction and job methods workshop back in 2002. I became its biggest fan. By the middle of the first workshop, I was cheering, wished that I had been exposed to these materials when I was starting out my career. So we'll see if I can gain your interest through this presentation, but it's really impactful. So let me go to why I believe it's important today. So Dr. Robinson, I mentioned a second ago, he is really a leading authority on lean manufacturing, he's also an author, you may have read his books, on creativity, on creating high-performing idea systems. He was a keynote speaker at a 2008 TWI summit where people were getting together starting in the early 2000s to begin to share these best practices and begin to implement them once again into manufacturing and into healthcare. And Dr. Robinson said at that summit back in 2008 that he thought that TWI was of more need now than its original urgent need to gear up for war. So that may sound crazy, right? But think about today's environment. We're competing globally. We have higher and higher customer demand coming from us and expectations. Our work is getting more complex. In today's world, we have limited resources. We see help wanted everywhere. People can't get the staff they need. And then, of course, economic stresses and pressures that we have. So it has come back to life. I attended these workshops. I knew it grabbed my attention along with other best practices out there like Toyota Kata, idea systems, lean manufacturing. For me, it's all about hitting those business objectives through our people and developing the talent of our people at all levels of the organization. So I was reading this book that's on the slide you see called Chasing the Rabbits by Steven Spear. I can't see everyone's faces. I'd love to be able to ask everyone to wave their hand if they've read this book, but I can't see everyone. So I'll just reference, I was reading this book, sitting down in my office, And I saw in the preface of the book the statement that I've typed out onto the slide. I would like to read the statement because this statement is what put to words my passion. I just couldn't express it as nice as this is expressed. I about fell out of my chair. So here's what caught my attention. It says, what makes organizations high velocity? Now, what he means by that is everyone else is chasing you, that you're the best of the best. You're the company that people in the local community want to work for. So what makes organizations high velocity is the way they deliberately and consistently make the best use of the ordinary distribution of human talent. Well, their competitors let so much of it be ground between the wheels of repetitive frustration, firefighting, and failure. Now, that really hit me hard because as somebody who worked for the MEP going into different companies every day, large, small, it didn't matter, different industries, I found I could go on that first plant tour and I could tell by talking to people if they were in the world of frustration, firefighting, or failure. Because that's a shame. I can remember doing a project right after the Great Recession with a company where it was in the office I was working on lean manufacturing, and the manager said to me, Susan, I only have my supermen left. And she was excited, not excited, but she was happy. Again, I'd love to talk to everyone. What do you think she meant by only have my supermen left? But I said to the manager, you know, that's good news and bad news. I know why you're saying that, because your supermen can be successful in the work environment that you have. However, when the economy turns around, this is after the Great Recession, we can't hire supermen. We hire what these words are, the ordinary distribution of human talent. So this is why I love what I read in this book called Chasing the Rabbit. It's got a lot more goody things in it, but that stood out to me. Now, when I teach these workshops today, training within industry, and let's say that my participants are coming from the front line. So this could be team leaders, key employees, supervisors, maybe some managers. When I teach the workshop, I go over what the TWI program represents, which is my next slide. And I say to them, you know, in the 40s, they called the 5 needs of good supervisors. You might say of good leaders. You know, we define a supervisor as anybody who's in charge of people, yes, or directs the work of others. That's what we mean by this word supervisor. So when I'm teaching the workshop, I say to people, you know, back then they called it the 5 needs. Today, I feel if we have this all in place, the day goes smooth. And you know what? They smile. They begin to relax because they're like, imagine that. Imagine if our days and our jobs were to go smooth every day, how that would feel. So let me say a little bit about what TWI is. I finally get to that, right, Ken? So every TWIJ module starts with this slide. I just mentioned the 5 basic needs for good supervisors. So let's talk through the slide a little bit. On the left, it says knowledge. On the right, it says skill. So what they said, and in my words, the day goes smooth, imagine if everyone in the organization has knowledge of their work. Now, knowledge of work, we never stop learning, and we have a discussion in the workshop. Why is that? Of course, we never stop learning because of change and all kinds of things. But knowledge of work typically is industry-driven. So depending on the type of product that you make, this week I happen to be doing job methods workshops at a high-end woodworking organization. They make beautiful things, a lot of craftsmen. So anyway, knowledge of work. The other one is knowledge of responsibilities. This is more at the local level. This is at your individual plants or departments. What are the responsibilities that people are held to? We need to know what they are. We need to have the authority to carry them out. And they're pretty much to the local plant drives what these policies and responsibilities are. Okay, let's go to the skill side. The skill side of this chart is where TWI resides. So there are 4 that I have listed in the circle, and there's another one off to the side. Let's start at the top, skill and instructing. Ken mentioned JI. You hear a lot of times it's called JI, skill and instructing. The real purpose of the skill of instructing is, yes, to get people to follow standards. In other words, no variation in how we do our work. And this can apply to every job in the company. In order to do that, we have to build a much deeper understanding of the work that we do. So I'll talk about that in just a minute, a little more detailed. There's another skill, TWI skill, called improving methods. This improving methods is really a basis or an activator for an idea system. And I'll talk about that further. The next one, the skill in leading or job relations. Another really wonderful TWI class. It's all about building respect and trust for people. Because after, when it all is said and done, we get our responsibilities met through people. Unless you're a research scientist in your basement, you're getting your work done through people. And in the center, because it trumps everything else, is we must have the skill in creating a safe work environment so people don't get hurt. So those are the 4 key J modules referred to, skill building modules in training within industry. You see to the right, I have the plus problem solving skills. The reason being is years later, they came up with a problem solving module, which you guys may have been through your own training on, for instance, the 8 steps of problem solving. And they have different titles for problem solving. These JI modules are part of your solution set to either prevent problems from occurring or to solve them. When it all is said and done, it's about preventing problems or solving. That's how we make the day go smooth. Okay, would love to have a dialogue, but it's a little hard on this format about what is the difference between knowledge and skill. I don't know, maybe a few comments in the chat. What's the difference between the two?
Right. I'm keeping an eye on chat.
I would say knowledge is something studied and skill is something learned.
Learned, and how do we learn it? Thank you for whoever commented. How do we learn that skill? What?
It's Ada Perez. Hands-on work, maybe?
Yes, thank you very much. So this may seem obvious, but when I teach the workshop, yes, we need the knowledge. And you find knowledge in your training matrices. You also find skill in your training matrices, but you're correct, the skill requires practice. So it really doesn't matter who we are and what our expertise is in. We get that expertise through practice.
We also have a comment, Susan, that says knowing how versus being able to do.
Thank you.
That's the other comment I had on
yes.
chat.
So being able to do, and when we work on any of these J modules or TWI in a company, we have to keep it in mind that in order to master this skill, it requires practice and it requires a coach. Like anything else, that's what it takes to become a master. So it's really important to understand that implementing these items require effort around practice and skills mastery. Okay, let me get into the different J modules in a little bit more detail. So the first one I have up on the slide is on job instruction, JI. Now, you see in the top right corner, I've got this photo of a bunch of cards. They're called pocket cards. So when going through a TWIJ class, there are individual cards that are double-sided. The one you see on this, the blue ones you see on this screen, is the job instruction pocket card. Every J module has a 4-step process. And you'll see that pattern as I go through each of these J classes. For job instructions, let me start with the definition of what we mean by job instruction. So on the right side, there is a definition. It says job instruction is defined as a way to get a person to quickly remember how to do a job correctly, safely, and conscientiously. That is much different than show and tell training. Without JI, this is how we teach people, is through show and tell. Sometimes we either show and that's it. Sometimes we tell and that's it. I was presenting an overview of TWI, like I'm doing now, to a medical hospital with all the directors of the entire hospital system. I said to the group, I'm sure you don't train through just show or just tell. I was making a point for why those methods of instruction are faulty. Somebody in the back of the room raised their hand and said, oh yes, most of our training is through telling alone, and most of that is in an email. So just when you think we do good on training people, once you get familiar with JI, it's easy to spot where we go wrong. So another point about this definition is it's a way to get a person. This is not the same as putting 5 new hires in a conference room to watch a video on good lifting and sign a paper that you know how to do it. That's not JI. Maybe that has a purpose, but that's not job instruction. And let me just comment on the words correctly, safely, conscientiously. If we say to do a job correctly, right away we have problems. Because what do we mean by correctly? If we have variation in how the work gets done, what is correct? So right away we challenge people to start defining what we mean by correct and what are the corresponding measures that will measure this thing called correct. Is it speed? Is it quality? Is it safety? What is it? The word safely is in there. JI will help to identify risks on safety and teach people how to not get hurt. And then conscientiously is a wonderful word. It's much different than show and tell training. In this case, because of the way JI is designed, people have a much deeper understanding of the job and they do their work with good understanding. So really important definition. The blue box in the middle of the slide that's titled How to Get Ready to Instruct. I'm not going to go over everything on this card because we'd take too long, but I want to point out of 2 highlights, item 1 and item 2. Item 1 says make a timetable for training. This is a really important piece of deploying job instruction. And this is a proactive training plan going forward. This is not just a training matrix that says who's trained on what. So that's a big part because as you begin to dissect the work that's getting done, you have to decide what is the best way, or maybe you could think of it as a teaching unit, as if you were a teacher in a school system. What is the lesson plan that I'm going to teach somebody? And it might be a combination of knowledge and skill. Item number 2 under that part of the card, how to get ready, is the magic of JI. The magic of JI is to create what they call a job breakdown sheet. People refer to this as a trainer's script. A trainer's script is not your SOPs or your work instructions. Those documents are necessary, but they're not useful for training. So we create what we call a trainer script, and what gets identified in a trainer script is the important steps. You see the words on the card, important steps. That's the what you do. but you also have key points for each step. That's the how you do the what. And finally, each key point needs a compelling reason why, which is how you gain the deep understanding, and it's how you gain buy-in for how the work should be done, is through compelling reasons. Compelling reasons are not because my SOP told me to. Just saying. So that is the magic of JI, and the reason why I say that is look on the left side, the blue card on the left side that's titled How to Instruct. There are 4 steps. That job breakdown that I just briefly mentioned is used in step 2 and somewhat used in step 3. So in step 2, the trainer uses that script to do their teaching. They show the job the first time. The first time they only give the steps. They come back, they show the job again, they give steps and key points. They come back, they do it a third time. They give the steps, the key points, and the reasons for the key points. Once that is done, and done well with a good job breakdown, the learner's turn is step 3. They do it 4 times. And now you use your trainer script as almost like an audit form as a trainer. Did I hear and see everything from the learner? Meaning, before I leave step 3, you see the cautionary point. It says, make sure the person understands, continue until you know they know. If we have a good job breakdown and we're really skilled, remember I said skills mastery. If we're skilled at teaching this 4-step method, just about any job that you teach somebody, they will come out of this recipe here doing the job correctly. That's much different than show and tell with very long learning curves. And the only thing that happens during long learning curves is mistakes. Whether it's quality mistakes or speed, you can't hit the speed, or people get injured, whatever happens. And notice at the bottom of this card, it says if the worker hasn't learned, the instructor hasn't taught. The first time I taught this workshop, JI, I was a nervous wreck, right? I'm like, first time I'm teaching it. I read that sentence because it's a 5-day workshop. I read that sentence day 1. I said, what do you think about that statement? Somebody in the back of the room rose their hand. They said, I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. The last 15 people I taught didn't get it. Just saying. By the end of the week, people feel different. Okay, so let me keep going. That's a great J class, and it's very popular, especially in the medical industry. I've conducted deployment and implementation of JI in medical companies that have received global awards. So it's very, very impactful. Next one, job relations, another really important. In fact, this might be the most important to start with. Let's go through a few highlights on job relations. I can't believe it. I'm right on time. This is so good. Okay, job relations. It says in the text here, teaches how to build positive relationships, increase cooperation motivation, and effectively resolve and prevent people problems. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice, you know? Yes, people are involved in getting the job done. So look at the illustration at the bottom right-hand side. I want to talk about the fact, first of all, we as leaders and managers must realize that we only get our responsibilities met through people. Right there alone, we have to think about that. We get our work done through people. Now, how do you do that? And that's the two-way job relations line. If you can see the words job relations with arrows on the line. When I teach this class, and let's say I have senior managers in my class, which happened recently, a president and all the VPs. Sometimes senior managers only see that job relations line going in one direction. It shows up by people telling others what to do, giving them information, telling them what their job is, telling them what they have to do. That's only a one-way job relations line. That doesn't necessarily result in the text that I just read: motivation, cooperation, and trust. So the question is, how do we build what they call in this workshop strong job relations, correct, strong job relations lines, strong, straight, and correct. And what they say in the workshop is you always have a relationship with everybody. Some relationships might be kind of wavy, kind of curvy, okay? That's not a strong, straight job relations line. So how do we accomplish that? Well, the middle yellow box in this slide is titled Foundations for Good Relations. So I won't go over each of these, but you could have entire curriculum around each of these topics. Let people know in advance how they're doing. Let each worker know how they're doing. Well, that starts with, what do you even expect from them? We're not always clear about that. We're not always clear on translating performance down through the organization. So there's entire works that can be done around that. Well, another one, give credit where credit is due. Boy, we can have fun with that. Reward and recognition. That is a really energizing place to be, including for the leaders. Can you get creative on how to reward and recognize people and give credit where credit is due? Tell people in advance about change. Here's your change management piece. We're not that good at telling people why, at giving them advance, letting them absorb it, and so on and so on. There are entire books, obviously, on change management. A really good one I like is ADKAR. Make best use of each person's abilities. Woohoo! Another really fun one to spend time on. When I worked for the Mass MEP, I had a team. One guy on my team, I found out on his vacation time, was a professional photographer for NASCAR racing. I had never been to a race in my life, but this was his passion outside of work. Because of his passion, my team designed a very innovative workshop with a race car, forming pit crews to change over the car. And we would bring the car to a company. We would have public events, company events, all kinds of events with this car. When we first started, we incorporated lean training into pit crew types of techniques to change over the car. And they actually had teams changing over the car with an actual race car and the driver, Ken Burchard, and his crew. Pretty exciting. But then when I got introduced to Toyota Kata, we integrated Toyota Kata into that training event. I'm just talking about, because of a person on my team and their abilities outside of work resulted in something that was wonderful. Okay, now the other part of the job relations card, double-sided card, is because our work areas are complex, problems will come up. Problems do come up. Okay, so how do we handle those? And a lot of times, because humans are involved, because emotions are involved, we don't even get to the point that we understand this is like any other problem-solving technique. If we treat people problems in a similar fashion, you're used to plan, do, check, act. So this card starts with, people come in with a work-related problem. I ask them to define, what is the problem? Right there is a skill that needs to be developed. Sometimes people come in with problems. It's like solving world hunger. It's so big of a problem and scope, we don't know where to start. Okay, so what's your problem statement? Now, once you do that, at the top of this card, it says, determine your objective. Another skill that people don't have when it comes to people problems. When you take action on a people problem, what is it that good looks like when you're done? What's the objective? Really important because it anchors you when you start to think about what action you're going to take. I won't go through all of the 4 steps, but I do want to comment about step 1. Because look, if we don't do step 1 well, you won't do the rest of this process well. So step 1 says get all the facts. Now this is on people problems. How do we get the facts? Review the record. So we coach people. This is the stuff you find in the written typically. Review the record. Every aspect about the individual, about the problem, review the record. That's pretty straightforward. Find out what rules and customs apply. Sometimes people on the front line don't have any idea of what the rules and customs are for some of the people problems that come up. Talk to individuals concerned, get opinions and feelings by the other individual. That is the biggest weakness in step 1, is to talk to others concerned, which could be in your company or outside your company. What do I mean by that? If there's a topic that the conflict is around and you as a leader don't have any background in that topic, when we say talk to others, you can go, we have the internet now, you can go research and find out what best practices are, because highly likely the root cause of the problem, other people have solved already. Go find out. Get opinions and feelings. Woohoo! There's a lot of skill required in getting opinions and feelings. So in February of this year, a second edition of a book was published called Humble Inquiry. Again, I'd love to see people's faces. I would ask, who has read this book, Humble Inquiry? It is a wonderful book all about developing the skill and asking good questions. That is needed in this process of solving people problems. Once you have all the facts, then you move into weigh and decide. These facts are connected. They're related to each other. We have to think it through. We have to brainstorm. What might I do? We take our ideas and weigh them against policies, practices, our objective, how the individual feel, the group will feel. And finally, we move to step 3. Now we have to make a decision. What are we going to do? This process prevents us, you see the italicized under step 2, says don't jump to conclusions. Anyone here guilty of jumping to conclusions with people problems? So this is a wonderful process, and it's very, very valuable, not only for the front line, but it's very, very valuable for all layers of management. I highly recommend it. Okay, let me go. Here's job methods. This is the skill in improving methods. I happen to be teaching 2 workshops this week right now. I'm in the thick of it. So look what the words say. Teaches people how to analyze and improve the way jobs are done by making the best use of people, machines, materials now available. A few key words in that statement. Analyze and improve. This is not the same as a suggestion box. Those do not work. I don't see boxes on walls much anymore, but anytime you have the person use the words, oh, we have a suggestion system, that's a failed approach to having a highly performing idea system in your company. So we're not talking the same as suggestion systems, and job methods gives us a 4-step recipe for how to analyze and then come up with ideas for improvement. The other key thing about this is that it's what is available now. So what job methods is it's not requesting of management, I'm making this up, to spend $50,000 on a new piece of equipment. That's a different part of improvement. That might be more engineering projects. That might be Six Sigma stuff. That's all important. But if you read the book I have on this slide by Dr. Robinson, explains that there's at least 4 mechanisms for improvement. But 80% of your potential improvement engine is through frontline ideas. All of a company's speed of improving, 80% of it is through frontline ideas. And we are not tapping into that. And well, very rarely do I find companies that have an effective idea system to grab ideas from the front line. They are also the source of your innovation. And this is not something I'm just speaking to because I believe it. It's because Dr. Robinson is a world thought leader on this and has studied it and researched it globally in many organizations. So if you want to learn more about idea systems, this book I have here is wonderful. Let's talk about job methods, the green card. So you see it says a practical plan to help you. When I present the materials in job methods and the forms and job methods, in fact, all of the JAKE classes, they designed this program with what they call the multiplier effect, meaning it is practical. It's simple. You come out of the workshop with a form and a card, no memorization, and people get it. And they're so happy for it because they see the good ideas that come out. Now, what Robinson will say, if you read that book, the reason why he says 80% is from the front line. Why? Because people who are doing the work, whether it's the office, the shop floor, anyone doing the work, they see the problems, they see the opportunities for improvement. These items are almost invincible to someone in management. And so because the employees in the front line see this stuff, they live it every day, it almost goes back to that chasing the rabbits. The firefighting, the frustration and failure is happening because of problems that can be easily solved. And so you flush them out using job methods. You surface these problems. It gives a voice to the employee for how they can sell the fact that change is needed. And they get management to buy in very quickly. Most of the ideas can be implemented in less than a week and cost a few dollars. And most of them with a high-performing idea system can be handled by the team themselves. They do not have to be escalated out of the team to some group, engineering or continuous improvement or quality. Now, the secret, a few things on this card. Look at the left-hand side, step 1, break down the job. The secret sauce for this step is I tell people you get in the weeds. You document, almost like you got a camera on you. If you get up and walk, it becomes a detail on your breakdown. You pick something up, that becomes a detail. You walk back, that's another detail. You see what I mean? And people, they don't see all that detail. They're fighting the fight to get through the day. Just make it happen. So we outline all the details, handwork, machine work, material handling, decision-making, perhaps in our minds, delays, all of that gets captured on the breakdown form. And with the detail, you must write down what they call on the form remarks, meaning all the observations. So it's not just the what you did in your job, but it's the struggles, it's the observations, it's the safety risks, it's the lack of standard work. Whoo, I can keep going. And you ask people to gather the data. Now, people on the front line, I say, I'm not asking you to get an accounting figure. I'm asking you to give me a gut feel. Is it 50% or 20%? Unless it's a hard sell, then you better go get a whole bunch of data. It's a gold mine for the front line to be able to share the problems and opportunities for improvement that they're facing every day. So the secret sauce is get all the details, step 1, and then once you have all the detail, you have all the remarks, a full current state, then we're going to get into questioning every detail in a certain order, and item 1 and 2 under step 2, and the purpose of that section is to spark ideas for improvement. And they start flying. They start flying by just asking these simple questions. And then the next is to develop a new method, work it out with other people by combining or eliminating tasks combining, rearranging, simplifying. And finally, step 4 is how do I sell my ideas? How do I put a proposal sheet together? And how do I get other people to buy in, my coworkers and so on? So that's job methods. Really, really wonderful. It does not eliminate Kaizens, Six Sigma projects. It doesn't eliminate anything, but it fills in the 80% of your improvement engine, and you can go really fast. All right, job safety. This trumps everything, doesn't it? We owe it to people to have a safe work environment. Companies say, well, I'm safe. I have a safety committee. Yes, we need safety committees, but safety committees do not guarantee near misses won't happen and injuries won't happen. So in 2020, I presented at the TWI Summit, and I was presenting on what is TWI and connecting it to the world of aviation. I couldn't help it, but you see the photo of that 1943 PT-23 aircraft, a World War II trainer plane. I can't tell if that's me or my husband, John Janus, in that plane, but my son is the pilot. So we know from his passion and career what the aviation community does in order to guarantee safety, and we need to learn from them. But this job safety class is a beautiful tool technique. Again, you see it's a 4-step method. The orange card on the left, 4-step method. But ultimately, what we're doing here with job safety is teaching everybody a routine or pattern that allows you to break the chain to prevent incidences, meaning near misses or injuries. And so I'll connect it back to the aviation community. When my son was young, just a little boy, we're at the local airport. A pilot says to him and to us, when something goes wrong in the sky, the pilot had at least 3 warnings they ignored. So if you see the chain down at the bottom of the slide, what it's saying and what we teach in the class is that there are direct causes for safety problems. There are indirect causes for safety problems, and there are circumstances, which is the word items, and when these combine is when you end up with an incident and an accident. So we're teaching everybody how to spot these causes of danger, how to put in countermeasures to break the chain. I had a wonderful experience of going to a company that had put in Dr. Robinson idea system. So they had idea system and boards on the walls, working good except for one problem. Their safety column on the idea board was empty because people had the mindset, including management. Managers and the safety committee own safety. People got hurt at this company. We introduced them to job safety, and now all of a sudden, opportunities for improvement and post-its going up on the idea board to take corrective action to prevent accidents. It was really, really wonderful to see that. And I got huge feedback immediately of incidences, accidents that could have been really bad that were prevented. So a quick comment as I'm getting to the end of my part, implementation and deployment. It's not good enough just to train people on these methods. Same thing with lean or any other continuous improvement training or things you do in your field. It's not good enough just to gain knowledge. We must develop the skill, and we must work on implementation. When I work with companies to implement these J modules, some of them companies are doing all of them, some are only doing 1 or 2. It doesn't matter. What we have to be prepared for is 2 things at the beginning, 2 things. One is skills mastery. We have to allow people who are using these methods to practice and get better. They need time and they need a coach. But what we also need is the infrastructure from management, from the organization that allows these methods to actually be used. So example on job methods. When I put people through the workshop of job methods, actually all these J classes, they come out cheering. That's not the issue. The issue is if the company does not have an idea system. So today in my second session, somebody held up the proposal sheet that they're going to turn in. They said, what do I do with this? They're not going to listen to me. So we have to answer that question on any of these modules. We have to have the infrastructure in place that allows these things to be used. Just a really, really quick, because I know I'm getting down to the end. If you're going to implement, for instance, job instruction, you're going to have to be prepared to have multiple layers of implementation. What do I mean by that? In the first layer, we need people to practice how to create job breakdowns and how to use them in the 4 steps of instruction. That's skills mastery. From an infrastructure point of view, you're going to be asking yourself, who are our trainers? That's not always clear. Who are our trainers? You're going to have to begin to redo your training matrices and your training plans. You're going to have to decide, where do these job breakdowns reside in our document control and our quality system? Because they do not replace work instructions, but highly likely you will find your work instructions are out of date. So this has to be addressed. That's what I call level 1. Level 2 might be creating internal coaches so you can sustain the program as people get promoted out of their jobs as trainer into supervisors. So you need coaches. You need an audit system to go back and check standard work on the floor by your learners. You probably will decide that you need a training location so we can effectively train people, that you'll need training aids. In level 3, you might be taking your job breakdowns and finding out, how do I eliminate key points? Because if I eliminate key points and their reasons, I'm making my jobs easier to do. So I'm just giving you an example that there's a lot toward implementing these modules. And this slide I have up right now kind of follows the typical project management outline. You have to have commitment at the top. You start in a pilot area. We're not going to do this across the whole plant in one fell swoop. So you have to have a pilot area. You got to pick a pilot area. You have to pick your measurements. Again, very similar to any project management or change management recipe. You conduct the training, you do the pilot, problems will show up. We got to pay attention to those problems and do something about them. We have to celebrate those who stepped up to the plate and were in the beginning pilot project. We got to recognize them and have fun with that, and so on. So, all in all, this slide is stuff I put together from books that I've read, Toyota Way, Toyota Culture, Toyota Talent. This is what it all boils down to. All of these modules combined will help you with the words I have on the slide. And these slides will be available, so you don't have to memorize this stuff. But I really love the chain. It's like a human. It comes from Toyota Talent. I can even tell you what page number if you want. But it's a beautiful thing because it says, hey, you know, when we hire people, you know, we have to develop able people. Then we have to move them to engage. Then we have to move them to enroll. And we can do that with the TWI program. So that's it on my part. Ken, I'm open to any questions or...
All right, so a couple of things. One, for all the attendees, I just posted the link to CEU certificate and the survey link. So you have to copy that while the meeting is going on. Because if you don't, when the meeting's ended, all the chat will be gone. You won't be able to copy it. So copy that now so you can do the survey and get your certificate if you'd like. Secondly, who has questions for Susan? You can put them in the chat. You can jump on verbally. It was a great presentation, Susan.
Yeah, I just want to say that was pretty good. A lot of information there. I don't want to say there's an element of common sense and everything you said about trying to get people to be a part of their whole process and responsibility. I like that about the thing with the safety. Everybody's responsible for safety. I think you must have heard that 1,000 times in my, since I'm working at two jobs, that was of course and Pratt Whitney. Safety is like very paramount. And the thing about getting management to recognize performance and getting everybody, figuring everybody out, that's a powerful tool for them to understand it. And you can't help that some managers, you know, that in my known in my past, on the government side of the house, but in auditing, but there are those who really know what they're doing and know how to motivate and move people, and there are those, you know, that they're struggling, and most of us are sitting there saying, "Boy, when's this guy going to tell us what to do?" You know, but that's my.
Well, so Larry, it's a little hard for me to hear your voice through the speaker system, but I caught some of the words that you were saying. And so when you deploy any of these modules, like I said, you're going to have to meet with the management and understand what the goals are, and you begin to learn who they are as an organization. And so every place I've gone into is different. Some are ready for this and some are not ready for it. And so I hear what you're saying as far as, you know, are they receptive to this? But truly, you can design a way to get started in order to really teach people through doing the power of these workshops. But you have to pay attention to what shows up, and you have to address what shows up as you get started. One company I was trying to deploy job instruction, but their standard work was in such poor shape, meaning their tools were not consistent. They were not in working order. Some places didn't even have tools. Some of the processes, you could not get good results by the defined process. I called the engineer at home that night and said, I just want you to know I've got to stop working on JI because we now have to turn our attention to standard work. It's in poor shape. So, you know, I worked with one company on JR, and that company had so much lack of trust between people at all levels of the organization. They loved JR, but they had to go all the way back up to defining what their core values were, because it was clear that they were not abiding by some ground rules for how to treat each other. It was so bad. So as you get started, you have to be observing and listening really carefully about who you're working with, what the current culture is, and see what shows up and do something about it to overcome, Larry, what some of those obstacles are going to be. As far as your comment about the person who is not so nice, did you say something like that?
So I said basically I've known a number of bosses that like to micromanage, and then you got the bosses who fall asleep at their desk. I don't know what they're doing. They don't seem to be concerned about anything. The big concerns are these simple little things that make sure you get your time card on time and all that stuff like that. Then you have the guys who are right in the middle. They must have read that book, 1 Minute Manager, because they're a little bit of both, and they focus on trying to get the new people on board and get them understood and trained. And then the ones who are been at it a long time and they have good confidence in that these people know how to do their job, they make these people almost, if they want to put it in a point of perspective, there's a point to go to. If you want to find out how to do this job, this person knows it inside and out, and this person has good communication skills. So it may eventually result that this person then becomes a lead worker or a worker lead. So that if he's smart enough, the boss will make him a work lead person.
So it's interesting because with your description of various types of people, JR, one of the one of the key principles of JR is we have to get to know our people as individuals.
Yeah.
And people don't leave stuff at home, by the way. So we have to get to know our people. And that becomes part of, as you develop a project to deploy this stuff at all levels of this implementation, we have to know who we're working with, and we have to find out who our champions are going to be, because it takes internal champions to drive this and to show results in a pilot way, and then gain more buy-in and more momentum and more people. And when you get to that point, you have people saying, when can I be in the next session? I want to be a trainer in the future. So yeah, it takes some hard work, and you do have to pay attention to who the players are.
Yeah, I was going to say also, Susan, some cultures are better at that than others, getting to know all the employees as people, not just business, not just as numbers, and also the way they deal with other suppliers or customers, they deal the same way. Some cultures are better at, treating people as people, not just business numbers. Getting to know your customer, getting to know your supplier, getting to know your employee is what you were saying.
So we're almost at the end, and a few people have signed off. I just want to make sure if there's any other questions that someone wants to know, I'm willing to answer anything, or they can always reach out to me separately, whatever it is, Ken.
Yeah, that was great. What a wonderful job you did, Susan. So this recording will be up on our website soon. And whatever you send me for slides, Susan, I will put up, absolutely. And that'll be great. And thank you for an amazing job. You were wonderful. And thank you to everyone
Thank you.
for attending. Yeah. Great job, everybody. Thank you so much. And we will see you in a few weeks for the next virtual free PDM. Thank you all.